Quadrilles, originally known as horse ballets, date back to the royal courts of 17th century Europe. They were developed from the dance of the same name and were performed to music on special occasions. Musical works were often composed just for the mounted quadrilles as part of elaborate equestrian festivals known as carousels. They remained a popular equestrian entertainment for the royal courts through the 19th century. Probably the most famous quadrille is that still performed by the Spanish Riding School of Vienna. Their white stallions and chandeliered riding hall are elegant reminders of these Baroque horse ballets. Other famous quadrilles are performed by the Cadre Noir of the French Riding School at Saumur and the Hanoverian Stallion Quadrille of Germany. In the Americas, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police keep the tradition alive with their 32-horse musical ride. Temple Farms of Wadsworth, Illinois continues the Spanish riding school tradition here in the U.S., performing a 6-horse quadrille on their lovely Lipizan stallions. In the U.S., quadrille is performed as a demonstration with 4 or more horses, many times up to 12, and as a competitive sport as part of dressage competition. Quadrille exhibitions are popular additions to many equestrian and non-equestrian events. In addition to horse shows, fairs, and festivals, quadrille teams are often asked to perform at school events and other popular venues. It's standing room only when the University of California Berkeley Festival of Ancient Music stages the Carousel du Roi, Carousel of the King, a modern recreation of a 17th century horse ballet originally performed for King Louis XIV of France. Competitive quadrille is done with only 4 horses and, like dressage, has both compulsory and freestyle tests. You can compete in compulsory tests starting at the introductory or walk-trot level and go through Advanced 2, which is equivalent to 4th level in dressage. Freestyle competition includes FEI levels. The U.S. Dressage Federation oversees quadrille competitions and publishes the tests and rules and guidelines. USDF also offers year-end awards to the top quadrille teams at each level, starting with novice. Quadrille is a fun and crowd-pleasing sport that is attracting more and more interest. The United States Pony Club has added quadrille to its championship shows. And there is also the possibility that quadrille may become part of Olympic dressage. Quadrille is a great way to have fun with your horse and other riders in a supportive environment. It's a challenging and absorbing activity that does not have to be competitive. For exhibitions, you can dress up in costumes, dance with your horse to fun music, and be creative and entertaining. If you compete, you are part of a team, which can relieve performance stress and prepare you for individual competition. It's also a wonderful way to teach a young and green horse to handle close contact with other horses and to get used to the bustle of the show atmosphere in the company of buddies he trusts. Having to stay in line at various paces also teaches horses to balance and rate themselves. Quadrille can also motivate riders to improve the dressage. In general, both horse and rider should be confirmed and comfortable at a level slightly higher than the quadrille level they are riding. The moves need to be automatic so that the riders can focus on the quadrille requirements. Quadrille performances have 3 key elements: spacing, alignment, and synchrony. Look for these when you watch a quadrille ride. Spacing refers to the distance between horses, either when in a line or column or when side by side. The spacing is determined by each group and can change with different movements. However, it must remain consistent within a movement. Alignment refers to the straightness of a line of riders, either one behind the other or side by side. It is most often seen coming up the center line in a column or when the horses cross the arena. In both cases, only one rider should be visible. Synchrony refers to horses doing the same thing at the same time, such as passing letters together or making individual turns or circles that must start and finish at the same time. These 3, plus submission and impulsion, combine to create the other key element unique to quadrille: performance as a group. Performance as a group refers to the ability of the entire team to perform the required movements in a pleasing and harmonious manner using alignment, spacing, and synchrony. Now watch these excerpts and notice the elements that make a good ride. Now that you've decided you want to ride quadrille, how do you get from a group of horses and riders to a team that performs as a group? First, you need to start with at least 4 compatible horses and riders. The riders not only need to get along with each other, they also need to share the same goals and commitment. Some teams meet twice a month for low-key, informal sessions with the goal of just having fun and showing occasionally. Other teams practice twice a week with serious competition as their goal. The important thing is that all members agree. Many of the informal groups have a number of riders that filter in and out. The more competitive groups try to have 5 or 6 committed riders, so that there's a replacement ready if any horse or rider can't perform for some reason. Horses need to be compatible in terms of temperament and to a certain degree movement. Size, color, breed, and even level of training are not that important. Acceptance of other horses and the ability to adjust their gaits are the priorities. The Riding Company, a junior young rider team that won the 2001 USDF Novice Level Team of the Year award, had horses that ranged from a 17-hand warm blood to a 13-hand pony. The other important element you need is a ground person. This can either be a trainer who teaches in a formal lesson or simply an observer who tells you when you've got it right or wrong. This is vitally important because it is difficult to judge what is going on when you are riding. Once you have found your 4 or 5 riders, it's time to have a meeting to take care of practical matters, such as where you practice, fees, if any, schedules, arena etiquette, and most important, the terms and movements of quadrille. After discussing and learning the quadrille terms, it is helpful to practice them on foot before getting on your horses. Simply walking is very useful to first learn the movements and later for learning the tests. But one of the more effective ways to really get a feel for working as a team on horseback is to do the movements while pushing wheelbarrows. This exercise tends to make you more aware of your spacing, of the need to prepare for a turn or change in direction, and of your relationship to the other riders. Wheelbarrows make you arc the turn the way you should on a horse. You want to set up a small arena in the same proportions as the real one and gather 4 to 5 wheelbarrows, hopefully of different sizes since horses come in different sizes. Then go through the movements with your ground person correcting your spacing, alignment, and synchrony. And don't forget to pat the wheelbarrows when you're done. One last topic before getting on your horses. Quadrille tests are ridden in a small 20 by 40 meter court rather than the large 20 by 60 meter court used for dressage classes. Therefore, the dressage arena has to be reset for quadrille classes at a show. Often show management is reluctant to take the time to do this. We want to show you how very quick and easy it is to reset the arena. You will need 2 people, 1 on each side of the arena, 2 2-meter, 6.5 foot poles, 6 cones, preferably with B, E, F, and K on 4 of them, and 2 to 4 jump poles if the ends of the arena are not easily moved. Starting at letters R and S, measure 2 meters, 1 pole length, towards A and place a cone. This will be the new B and E for the short court. If possible, put R and S on their sides or turn them around. Go to the large court B and E and measure 4 meters, 2 pole lengths, towards A and place a cone to create the new F and K. Go to V and P and measure 2 meters, 1 pole length, towards C and place a cone. This is the end of the short court. Move jump poles or poles from the extra part of the long court to mark the end of the arena. Be sure to leave enough space for two horses to enter side by side. If possible, move F and K to their new positions, marking the original places so they can be returned with no problem. If the arena letters cannot be easily moved, then your cones serve as the letters. Then move B and E to their new positions, marking the original places. That's all there is to it. Now that you've learned how to do the movements on foot, it's time to get on your horses. In the beginning, when you are learning movements and how to keep your spacing, alignment, and synchrony, you can have any number of riders working together. If you have enough horses and riders to form more than one team, they can all practice together. At your first session on horseback, it's a good idea to review the rules of the arena, safety issues, and go over the quadrille terms and movements. This gives your horses a chance to get used to the group. Then you can move out, forming a large egg-shaped circle that leaves plenty of room between horses. Many horses get upset when other horses are close to them, so you need to give them time to get used to the idea. The whole focus of this first practice is to get the horses comfortable with each other. While you want to have adequate spacing between horses, trying to maintain correct spacing will come later. Once the horses seem comfortable on the circle, then you can try going down the long side or doing a change rein across the diagonal. If all is going well and the riders feel comfortable, go back to the circle and try trotting. Again, your spacing is likely to be all over the place, but this is not important. Safety is the primary consideration at all times. Usually it doesn't take long for the horses to get the idea, and by the end of the first session, your spacing will have improved and you'll be starting to look like a team. The next thing you need to introduce your horses to is the idea of having other horses close to them, either side by side in a pair or passing close to them from opposite directions. Depending on how the horses have reacted, you may try this in the first session or put it off to the next one. Since you do not want a horse to ever feel trapped or confined, it's best to start pair work by going down the center line. That way, the horses have an escape route if they feel threatened. The same thing is true for passing in opposite directions. Start to do passes in the center of the arena before trying them on the ends. Also try pairing horses with different ones so that they can get used to having changing partners. Occasionally, two horses simply do not get along. If this happens, don't force the two together. Remember that safety is always the primary consideration. By the end of the first or second session, your horses should be used to each other and working together, and the riders should have a good idea of how to ride on a team. Now it's time to start practicing the movements. We're going to go back to the 3 key elements of quadrille as the basis for teaching some of the movements. Once you have these elements firmly understood, then you can work on any movement, including ones you incorporate into a freestyle. The first of these elements is spacing, or the distance between horses. There are 2 kinds of spacing, column and lateral. Column spacing refers to the distance between horses when riding single file or in a column of pairs. The exact distance is not specified. Experienced teams may use spacing that is less than a horse's length, while beginning teams may prefer more distance. Here is an example of a team riding with very even close spacing of approximately 1 horse length. Spacing is visually measured between the horses' bodies. In this sequence, the riders open up their distance, creating a spacing of about 2 horses' length. Again, this is very even spacing and remains so as the riders open it up. Spacing should be uniform throughout each movement, but it may vary from movement to movement depending on the gait or pattern. Some teams open their spacing at the canter as compared to the trot. This is fine as long as it is consistent. This team develops very wide spacing at the canter, but you'll notice that they are perfectly aligned and each pair crosses the center line together. In some movements, horses in a file separate and then return to the file. It is important that the space left when the horse is separated be maintained so that everyone fits seamlessly back into line at the movement's conclusion. Watch how this team separates and comes back together several times, all the while keeping their spacing so that they fit back together seamlessly. How do you establish and maintain your spacing? In 3 words, lots of practice. As a beginning team, you'll probably want to keep at least 1 horse's length spacing between each horse. Many teams use 2. This is where your ground person becomes important. He or she can help you line up and establish the spacing you want. Once you have established your spacing, then look between your horse's ears and notice where your gaze hits the horse in front of you, most probably around the hocks. Use that as your reference point. You'll find if you move closer, instead of the hocks, you may see the point of the buttocks. If your spacing becomes incorrect when you're on a straight line, you can use the corners of the arena to either catch up or put in more space. To catch up, you can cut the corner and make it shallower. To put in more space, you ride deeper into the corner. If you are in a circle, make use of the same idea. The other kind of spacing we see in quadrille is called lateral spacing, which is the distance between horses when side by side. This is most often seen when pairs come down the center line, and when making individual turns across the arena or obliques. As in column spacing, close spacing is more difficult, but evenness of the spacing is the most important criteria. In turns across or obliques, the accuracy of the lateral spacing can best be seen from B or E. but the result of poor spacing will be evident as the riders return to the rail and have to make adjustments to their column spacing. Since the compulsory tests begin and end with pairs coming down the center line, then spreading to a fan formation, it is very important to have your lateral spacing correct so that you can make a good first impression. Probably the easiest way to start working on lateral spacing is to work in pairs. Once you have gotten used to a consistent spacing as a pair, you can apply it to the horse next to you, no matter how many horses there are. Watch these teams' creative use of pairs and lateral spacing in their winning rides. The next characteristic of quadrille we will consider is alignment. Just as with spacing, there are two kinds of alignment, column and lateral. Column alignment is evident when the horses are in a line or file. Whether in a single file or in pairs, only the first horse and rider should be visible. The others should be lined up behind so that they can be seen only if they are taller or wider than the first rider. Having correct alignment when going down the center line is very important since you are heading straight at the judge. Here are a couple of training techniques to help you with establishing good alignment. Of course, you still need your ground person. For inexperienced riders who are not used to riding the center line, it is helpful to set up an alley of cones down the center of the arena. The cones serve to both teach the riders where to go and as a visual barrier for the horses that keeps them from drifting. As they ride through the cones, each rider should focus on keeping her horse exactly behind the horse in front. Start at the walk, then practice at all three gates as you progress. Because you are riding as a team, it is more important to be aligned correctly than to be exactly on the center line. However, if the first horse is off-center, then the whole team will be off-center, and you don't want that. To help with this, you need to train your eye to see the center line continuing past the end of the arena and intersecting a point beyond A or C. One way of doing this is to find a spot or place a cone directly in line with A or C, but some ways beyond them. Then line yourself up so that there is a straight line between the 2 points and you only see the letter. This will give you a line to follow. Each member of the team needs to practice this so that they learn to do the turns onto the center line individually. Lateral alignment is most often seen when individual riders turn off the long side and go across the arena, and in pairs work. The riders' bodies must line up exactly, knees, hips, and upper bodies, so that the judge sees only one rider when the team or pair crosses the center line. One useful technique to learn alignment is to ride in pairs holding a whip. If the whip is at right angles to the horse's spines, then the riders are aligned. It is easy to see when the whip angle changes, showing one rider ahead or behind the other, and you can learn to adjust your pace to keep even. When going around turns or on a circle, the inside rider must adjust his/her pace to match the outside horse and rider. The outside rider sets the arc of the turn or circle, and the inside rider matches it. In this sequence, you can see the more experienced first pair keep together around the turn, while the less experienced second pair has more difficulty keeping together. But eventually, they get it too. In this freestyle ride, you can see the pairs maintaining good alignment throughout this sequence of circles. The next building block of quadrille is synchrony, which refers to riders doing individual movements at the same time. It is most often seen in transitions, where all horses change gait at the same time, when two columns perform separately, and in individual turns and circles that start and finish at the same time. Alignment depends on synchrony, and without good synchrony, you cannot have good alignment. A quadrille team first encounters synchrony when riding in separate columns on opposite sides of the arena. When riding like this, it is important that the riders across from each other keep together, so that they reach their corresponding letters at the same time and/or cross over the center line together. Usually, one set of horses is designated as the ones, and the other is the twos. The ones set the pace and the spacing, and the twos must match them. The easiest way to determine the ones and twos is to be in a column and have alternating riders turn in opposite directions. In a turn across the arena, you must all leave the rail with exactly the same arc to the turn and at exactly the same time in order to have correct lateral alignment crossing the center line. You must return to the rail with exactly the same arc and at exactly the same time to achieve correct spacing and alignment at the end of your movement. Getting all the horses to make exactly matching turns is one of the more difficult tasks in quadrille. One of the best ways to learn is to set up a series of cones that define the arc you want to make, usually 1/4 of a 10-meter circle. Then ride single file through the cones from all directions to get the feel of the shape of the turn. Riding a 10-meter circle also helps horses and riders to get a feel for the turn. After everyone is comfortable with the correct arc, you can start counting the steps in the turn. Each rider counts how many steps it takes her horse to make the arc of the turn. If it takes your horse 4 steps to make the turn correctly, then doing it in 2 steps means you've cut the turn, and doing it in 6 steps means you've made it too big. This really helps when you start practicing without the cones. Counting can help keep you together. We once again want to emphasize the importance of groundwork. You need to both learn the movements and work out the problems you encounter before you ever get on your horse. This keeps the horse from being frustrated or bored. You can use the same training techniques to practice half circles and obliques. First, establish the size and arc of your half circle with cones. Then practice in a single file. Then count the steps needed to complete the half circle, and finally practice the timing of the turns. With obliques, that is diagonal lines, you do not arc the turn, but you will need to ensure that each horse leaves the rail or center line at exactly the same angle. After everyone is riding matching arcs in a single file, then you need to practice individual turns. This is when everyone turns at the same time, rather than one after the other. To make sure you all turn together, you'll need to decide on how you want to call the turn. When practicing movements, usually the trainer or ground person gives the command for the movement several strides ahead so that you can prepare, then says "ho" when you should execute the command. In competition, of course, you cannot give verbal commands, but you can have a team member blow a whistle or nod, or have your reader blow the whistle. After the ho or whistle, you need to agree on just when you will all make the turn. Usually it is best to wait a couple of steps rather than to try and rush the turn. In this example, the sequence is ho, 1, 2, turn. Then each rider counts the steps of the turn. When turning back onto the rail, it is equally important to count the steps of the turn to make the turn even. Now that we've shown you the important elements of quadrille and some techniques for practicing movements, here is a performance that puts it all together in a superior style. This is a novice level freestyle that earned 84% at the 2001 California Quadrille Association Championships, performed by the Riding Company of Los Angeles, California. Here is a Grand Prix exhibition quadrille ridden by 4 of our Olympic riders at the 2004 Freestyle Championships. The riders are Stefan Peters, Leslie Morris, Jan Ebling, and Leslie Webb.